Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. We are here with episode 340 with a big time get. We are here with the GM of the PWHL Boston, newly revealed name, the Fleet, Danielle Marmer. Danielle, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Thank you so much for having me. I'm great.
No, thank you for doing this. This is huge for us, especially. I mean, would have been even better if you guys held the announcement of the names till today. But we'll let it go. We'll let it go. You and I talked briefly the other day about this. This was a pretty well guarded secret. These names and logos.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
was. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Well, the league went through sort of potentially naming the teams, and those trademarks got leaked, and they said, okay, we need to figure out a better way to do this and make sure we do it the right way. At that time, there were, the 6 GMs and maybe like 10 other people working for the league. So once they got in, people on the business side, the marketing, branding, they're like, no, we're going to do this the right way. And this time around, they made sure to keep that tightly sealed.
I will say we did. So we recorded a podcast last night and we did a live power ranking of all the logos. Of course, I picked Boston. I think it's a great logo. It's got the whole nautical theme. It's got a little nod to the whalers, which I don't know if that was intentional, but I like it because that's such a great logo. And the one thing we did agree upon is that Montreal has to be Montreal. They can't just be the Montreal Victory. It's how is it Victoire de Montreal? Is that how I think the way you say it? Oh, so Montreal.
It's Victoire.
No, that's it. Yeah. So nothing better than to get the Boston Montreal rivalry going already in the new league. But let's go back a little further. Let's get back into it. So if I read this right, you were born in Foxborough but grew up in Dorset, Vermont.
You know what? It's so funny that you say that. I at some point, I must have been 14 years old filling out my high school bio and put, instead of where I grew up, put where I was born is Foxborough. I was born in Newton Wellesley Hospital.
Oh, okay.
But that has followed me around.
It's
that
everywhere.
Yeah. People were like, "Oh, were you born in Foxborough?" I was like, "No, I wasn't." But we lived in Foxborough for a couple of years, and then my family moved to Vermont, and that's where I grew up.
Where you were now, if I'm correct, that's like western, up past Stratton Mountain, right?
Yeah, it's southwest, so we're 5 minutes from the New York border, but right by Stratton, Bromley, the ski mountains.
We did a lot of skiing growing up.
Yeah, I actually kindergarten through 8th grade. They used to take us out of school at noon on Tuesdays in the winter months and sent you. You'd either go to the mountain or you went to the ice rink. And my mom ran the rink, and I had practiced there anyway that night, so I wasn't going to spend why go there when I could go skiing.
Yeah. So, that probably leads to my next question. Who got you into skating? Who got you into hockey?
I guess I have to give my older sister credit. When we were in Massachusetts, she was figure skating, and my mom said that I was just a disaster to bring to the rink because I would cry and yell and want to get on the ice. And my mom finally asked, this instructor was like, "Can she do this?" As a 2-year-old. And they're like, "Yeah, I guess if she'll decide if she can figure it out and if she wants to." And I apparently got skates on, and I would, skate, fall, pop right back up, skate, fall. And that's how I guess it's technically started. I was figure skating at first. When we moved to Vermont, there was not there's not a figure skating program. There's only a hockey program at the local rink. And so my mom started the figure skating program so that we could skate. And I think pretty quickly my dad was sort of like, he grew up a Bruins fan and a hockey fan, and was like, if I'm going to sit at the rink all day, my kid's going to have a stick in her hand.
That's great. Wow. Think of that. How one of those sliding door moments, if you had followed figure skating instead of, you know what I mean?
Yeah. So I did both for a long time, way too long. I didn't like figure skating, but I just was a kid was so busy, and I liked I played every sport you could imagine. And I just thought that's what I was supposed to do. So even when I didn't like stuff, I never told my parents I didn't like it. So I was figure skating till I was 13, way too long.
Do you think that helped with your edge work though?
Definitely.
Yeah, for sure. Right.
The skating was definitely the area that I was most comfortable in, and what allowed me to take my game to the next level for sure.
You said your dad was a Bruins fan. I assume that was hereditary as well. You grew up in a Bruins household, I'm guessing.
Yeah, I mean, his whole family's from Boston or the greater Boston area. He grew up in Framingham. So
Oh,
he's, yeah, a fan of like the big bad Bruin days. And, he used to show me YouTube videos of Bobby Orr. And I
yeah.
used to be kind of confused because like I was a forward. So I was like, why am I watching this defenseman? Now I appreciate it. I respect it a ton, but.
Oh, we're gonna have to talk once we're done recording because I grew up in Framingham also. I have to
Oh,
see if
no
me
way.
and your dad have any overlap there, which is gonna make me feel even older than I normally feel when we're doing this. Um, so your bio says soccer, lacrosse, a little bit of everything growing up,
Yeah.
whatever sport was in season, kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah. I just, I think when I was real young, I was, playing little league baseball, I was playing soccer, hockey, figure skating, snowboarding, anything I could get my hands on. Got to high school. I went to New England boarding school. You had to play a sport in each
Yep.
trimester. So I picked up lacrosse there for the spring. And yeah, played all, soccer, hockey, and lacrosse through high school.
Oh, that's great. So when you went to Quinnipiac,
Mhm.
were you looking at other schools? Were there any other schools in the mix, or once you went there, were you like, "This is it"?
Yeah, I sort of had a mixed bag of schools. I was a bubble Division 1, Division 3 player. So I was, I had Quinnipiac, Union, and like Middlebury.
Yeah.
So I was kind of all over the map. Princeton was in the mix at one point. Quinnipiac honestly ended up like, I think for me, it's funny, I didn't like the idea of there being an entire league of players better than me. Like I wanted to play at the highest level.
Yeah.
If I were making that decision again now, obviously like everything is worked out very,
Mhm.
very well. And I'm happy for the path that I took. But just like knowing what I know now about opportunity in the game, like I probably would have taken the Division 3 route because I was just on that bubble. And it was a grind getting to Division 1, getting to Quinnipiac and having to fight my way into a lineup and, against these kids who are just, training at the highest levels for much longer than I was. We're playing a lot, just higher level hockey. It was definitely like an awakening for sure.
It's funny. I talk about this whenever I interview one of the current NCAA players, and it's like one of the biggest decisions of your life is
Mhm.
an 18, 17-year-old is making. It's crazy.
You're
Right?
younger too, like
Yeah.
in a lot of
Yeah, when
cases.
you commit, right? Yeah, for sure, for sure. Well, I don't think you sell yourself short. I mean, 4 years at D1, you appeared in over 100 games, two-time ECAC Hockey All-Academic, Quinnipiac Scholar Athlete Award, National Scholar Athlete Award, and you guys had a great run
Yeah,
in your time there. I
yeah.
mean, you won the ECAC, your junior year, and you made the NCAA tournament. So I asked around, and you were described to me as a smart grinder. That was
Hmm.
one, and high hockey IQ, which I know is backhanded when they say that about
It's
players.
so kind though that they say that. Whoever you're talking to, very kind, generous.
But yeah, I mean, you were. I mean, from what again talking to people, it was very much like always in the right place, stick always in the lane, always ready for the pass, defensive responsible, that kind of player, which is the kind of player, I mean, you as a GM know way more than me. That's the kind of player you want, are those kind of players at some point, right? I mean, you want the superstars, sure.
Yeah, I'll tell you a funny story. So, I guess when you are not the most talented player on the ice, you have to play that way, right? Like you
Yeah.
have to find a lane and be really good at what you can control, and so that means being really reliable, having a lot of effort. The work ethic piece of it. Like you have to do things the right way. So when I started working for the Bruins and I was scouting, and I was sitting with their director of amateur scouting, Ryan Nato. We were watching a game and I was kept pointing out the players that I liked. And he told me, he's like, you keep pointing out, like, he's like, you got to take the coach's hat off. Like you keep pointing out these guys that are working hard. They're in the right spot. They're smart players. But the reason that player is doing that is because they couldn't make it as the talented player. Like they wouldn't be here if they didn't have the ability to find their lane and find their role being, the grinder, the player that just has a high IQ because they have to think the game better than somebody who can just naturally, who's a talented player, can naturally feel it. So it was just sort of funny. He's like, you got to take the coach's hat off, which I thought was a really interesting comment, because he's like, we're looking as scouts, you're looking for the players that you can add all that later. Like you can, work ethic's a little challenging, right? Like some people think that that's something that you either have and you don't. But teaching someone the game, you can teach someone how to play hockey, but some of the skill pieces and those elite skill sets, like that's just, you can't teach somebody how to shoot the puck the way that David Pastrnak shoots the puck, or stuff like that. So I thought that was funny, that I was really like, I kept noticing and being excited about the players that I think I identified with. But it was interesting to hear him say, like, no, that's not what we're looking for right now.
No, I get that. We were just talking about, I don't remember what the context was, but we were talking, I know what it was. We were doing jerseys, like as like a parking lot conversation. Like if you had to pick 2 jerseys off of every team in the NHL, PWHL, whatever it is, a former player, a current player, what kind of guy would you like? And my co-host was making fun of me because for the Devils, the current player I said was Curtis Lazar, and he was like, "What is wrong with you?" I'm like, "I love him. He grinds. He's like, your whole list is all like third in line grinders."
Yeah,
I'm like,
well, you need those guys, right? Like
you
need those. You certainly need those players. I think I saw a stat talked about, when you look at the NHL, the majority of the players in the NHL, the biggest number of players are first round draft picks. The second biggest group of players are second round draft picks. And then the third biggest group of players are undrafted. And
really?
it's those, 3 through 7 are just poor man's first rounders. So they're that skilled, talented, have that upside potential, but they're not, how you fill the rest of your depth and fill the rest of your rosters with the players who can work hard, be in the right spot, see the game well, and are reliable.
Well, that's the work ethic thing too that you can't teach maybe in that middle group there.
Yeah, and those are the players that go to college for 4 years and they
have a good time.
Yeah, they play 2 years of juniors, 4 years of college. Like they have a long runway to develop their game.
Yeah, that's interesting. That's an interesting way to look at it. I don't want to jump that far ahead yet because I wanted to ask you about Cass Turner.
Yeah.
I read some articles where you basically credited her with saving your hockey career, and I don't want to overlook that because she's a heck of a coach, and it seems like a heck of a human on top of that. So I want to give you space to talk about her.
Yeah, I mean, I thank you, because I have to talk about her when I talk about just like my playing career and then my coaching career and now my career in management, I guess. It's all like I owe her so much. She took over after my sophomore year. So like I said, I grew up in rural small town Vermont. Was a big fish in a small pond. I did go to New England boarding school, but still like that world's also, you're a big fish in a small pond there. But I thought I was getting out of the small pond. So I didn't realize that I was still just in maybe a medium-sized pond. So when I got to Quinnipiac, like it was definitely like I was shell-shocked a bit and didn't really know what I was in for and had to figure that out. And that was really challenging, on top of, I had a head coach at the time who he's a little old school, like the sort of motivate through fear and punishment. And that didn't, obviously work for me as a player who was usually the one getting yelled at.
Gets tiresome. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. So I just had a hard time. Like I wasn't loving being at the rink. And as the kid who needed to be doing extra lifts, extra skill sessions, like I was just showing up for when I had to be there, because I had so much anxiety around being at the rink that I avoided it. And the classroom is sort of my safe space, which is why when you listed those accolades, they're all academic accolades.
It's scholar athlete, right? That's what we always say. Scholars first.
Yeah. So when she took over, like we had a little bit of a heart to heart, and she was kind of like, "What do you want to get out of this experience? Like you've got 2 years left." And she really sort of dumbed it down for me. Like I was trying to be this player that I was in high school, and I couldn't figure out the identity piece. And I really just needed to embrace being a fourth liner, which meant like I had to be the best teammate. I had to bring energy into the weight room. And that had to be where I was really contributing, bringing people along in the weight room and getting people excited about training. I was, always in the group that was going against our first power play unit as the penalty kill. And so I had, started to embrace getting fired up for that and trying to make our power play better by being, as much of a headache on the kill as I could, and vice versa. When, we were working on our penalty kill and I was on the power play, like I really, embraced those roles and simplified what I was trying to accomplish. So instead of thinking like I got to go out there and score a goal to be noticed, like that wasn't it at all. I just had to break pucks out consistently, be great on the F1, and set up the next line to be successful. And that all like started to snowball. And when you are excited about blocking shots, and getting pucks out after, getting stuck in your zone, like you're the one that's getting your teammates excited about that. They're going to be so excited when you do that. So I'd go out and I'd block a shot, and it was like I'd come back to the bench. It felt like I scored a goal. It felt like that energy. You could just feel the momentum in game shift if I had, had a good shift and then could bring energy. And so once I realized that and didn't downplay that role, like really embraced and understood how important that was, it became really fun again. And so I think Cass is the reason that I understood that. Like she taught that to me and helped me see that. And then, in those first 2 years, like I said, I was kind of, I really turned to the academic side of things. Like I was a legal studies major. I thought I was going to go to law school, and that was sort of my, hey, everyone, I'm no longer impressive in hockey, but I'm going to be impressive. I'm going to be a lawyer. And that was, I think, maybe my ego talking more than it was something I really wanted to do. And so as I got, things started to pick up for me hockey wise, and I'm starting to find a role and play more. And I'm coming to the end of my college career. My interest in law started to decrease. And I was like, do I even really want to do this? And so I think, my career ended. We lost to Princeton in the playoffs. And I remember that being our last game, and having that moment that people talk about of like taking your jersey off for the last time, having that sort of identity crisis, and knowing like I had to put a deposit down in law school, I think a couple days later, and being in Cass's office, being like, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't know what to do. I just started to figure
all the emotions and everything.
Yeah, and I really just started to figure this out. Like I was 2 years late to the game, when I think about it in college hockey. And so she was sort of like, look, you've had a really unique playing experience. Like you've been in the stands as a healthy scratch, and, you started in this, in playoffs your senior year. Like you've been everywhere in between. So when, there's a lot of coaches out there who were star players, and they were the starting goalie, the first line, first D pair, they can relate to those players, but they have a harder time connecting with the middle of the bench. She's like, you're going to be able to connect with those players and get people excited about different roles, and maybe roles that they initially aren't that excited about. And so that meant a lot to me, that she felt like I'd have that ability, and I felt strongly about being able to connect my experience to other players, and hopefully, being able to turn their hockey careers around a similar way that she helped me turn mine. So that's how I got into hockey as a career, and coaching. And yeah, never meant to be here.
I'm telling you, I coached high school lacrosse, and it's so rewarding, a sport that you love, that you can make that difference to a 17, 19, 20-year-old kid. And to think about how hard that was on you personally, it's a huge ego check. I mean, it's hard. I played beer league, and there's guys in their 50s who are like, it's a penalty kill, and it's like, no, you sit down. And they're like, what do you mean? I'm like, well, you can't skate backwards, so you can't be out there. You know what I mean? So it's hard at any level, but it's got to be so hard for a kid, because anyone who's playing in college sports was the best in their town.
Yeah.
Right. Or their rec league, whatever it is. And yeah, that's tough. The other thing I want to touch upon, her, the say yes mantra that she's a big fan of. I think that's fantastic. Like, don't dismiss stuff out of hand. Yeah. Right. Is that basically the gist of it? Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I wouldn't be where I am today if I didn't say yes to opportunities, or to even just, and not like job interview opportunities, but just like networking opportunities, meeting people. I, was coaching at Connecticut College, was an assistant coach there. It's Division III. And I wanted to get back into Division I. I wanted to be somewhere where I could give players every resource to be successful. And, there were some opportunities to do that, but Cass was like, why don't you come back to Quinnipiac? And I don't have, she's like, I don't have an assistant position for you, but I have this hockey operations role. We can turn it into sort of a player development role.
So it is true then. I read that she created this role kind of for
created,
you.
yeah. And so like saying yes to something like that when I could have just stayed where I was or tried to, force myself into maybe a role in Division I that wasn't going to help me grow. It wasn't a place that was going to get much better, or wasn't a place that had a staff that was going to necessarily help me. And so I knew I trusted her, obviously. So, and being able to work for her and see how a Division I program operates, like at the highest level, there's that. And then I was doing my master's at the same time. I go into I finished my master's. So that was 2 years. That was all that I was planning on being there for. Was ready to go get back behind a bench, get on the ice. Because, when you're doing operations, like now they actually just recently changed the rule where they allow 4 coaches, or 4 full-time staff to be on the bench and on the ice. But at the time it was only 3. So I could do all the, video, I could code games, I could do opponent scouting, but I wasn't allowed to go out recruiting. I wasn't allowed to get on the ice, and I wasn't allowed to be on the bench for games. So,
that's practice also. You're not allowed to be on the ice for practice too. Oh, I didn't know that.
Push pucks, but it ended up being more helpful for me to film practice and cut the film for that. So, so after my second year, I was like, I'm ready. Like I'm, itching to get back behind a bench, and so I went out and I applied for, a lot of Division I assistant coaching jobs. I think I was a finalist at 7 places.
Wow.
And I got one of the jobs. And so that was, when you're a finalist, like you show up to the school and you do the whole like in-person interview and tour and you meet everybody, and it's a whole day, so I did that. It was exhausting and pretty defeating to hear no as many times as I did. Right. But Cass was like, hey, well, that means you get to come back, be at Quinnipiac. And she's like, but what's going to be on your resume in a year from now that was not today? Like, why are you getting these jobs next year? If, so what's going to be different? And so this is sort of the say yes moment is, she was sending me all different kinds of opportunities, different things I could do on the side or find ways to, I was at the time, like the summers, I was trying to work every camp I could. So I was still getting on the ice and interacting with players and getting to know, like, especially like the recruitable age players. But, I felt like that was a place, the recruiting piece was a place I think coaches were a little skeptical of. Like I didn't have proven ability to recruit and evaluate talent at the highest level. And so
you only get one shot with these kids.
Yeah. So one of the things she sent me was the Bruins were doing their diversity and inclusion mentorship program with their scouting staff. And again, I looked at it, I was like, it felt a little bit like homework. I think when you're, when you go from coach player to being on the same staff, like I think I always felt like I was her player a little bit. So it was like, I got to say yes to one of these or else like, I don't want to,
she's tell
me what to do. And so this one came through and I'm like, well, I've always been a Bruins fan. This is cool. Like to get to, potentially work with one of their scouts. So I, didn't want to do more work or do, I was still working a full-time job, but I said yes to it and never imagined I did not say yes because I thought I was getting a job with the Bruins. I said yes because I thought it would pad my resume, and a year, later I'd maybe be able to prove that I did fill that sort of recruiting and evaluating gap that was, previously there. And so that was sort of a say yes moment that obviously materialized into a full-time job with the Bruins. And then
the timing is just like that was the first year of the program. You were the first class, right? And just the timing of it is, it's like meant to be,
Yeah, it was quite serendipitous. And I just so Ryan, the guy that I was talking about, he was my mentor, ended up being my mentor. And again, I thought this would be like a once a month, like we'd get on a call and, it would be something I said I did. But we got on our first call. I remember it was Tuesday, 9 a.m. And after the call, after an hour, he's like, so want to do every Tuesday? I was like, oh, okay, sure. So we talked every Tuesday from September to May. And we, I watched a ton of video on players. I filled out eval reports at the, same reports that the Bruins fill out, the scouts fill out now. And we would just get on calls and talk about players and talk hockey. And we just really got along. And I think, he says he liked how I talked about hockey and talked about players, and they were looking to sort of evolve their or add to their player development staff. And so that's how that happened. We can, obviously we'll I'm sure.
Well, I had some questions about the videos he sent you.
Sure.
Because it said, I read somewhere that I said an article, I think he said he sent you 3 videos of the players to be analyzed.
Yeah.
So was it video clips of was it games? Is that what clips?
It would be like 3 different types of, so the first month was centers. So it was like Mika's advantage ad, and then it would be
a huge Rangers fan. He's gonna love that you picked his advantage ad.
it would be like a pro, and then it would be maybe a player who's like AHL or college level, and then there'd be maybe like a junior player.
Okay.
And so we'd get like sort of different levels, and then the next month would be wingers, and then it'd be D, and then it'd be goalies, and then it'd be like specific to the NHL, and then it'd be specific to the AHL, and so on till we like crossed off all the months or got through it all. And so so that was, and I spent like a lot of time on that too, and I think that's just something like I like to do things well. Like I don't like to sort of half-ass anything. Sorry, my cat's getting in this. So there are times where like it'd be Monday night and I'm like, I don't really want to do this. Like I gotta talk to Ryan in the morning. I haven't finished my scouting report. Like maybe I'll just cancel on him. And I was like, this guy who's got to be so busy is the time to meet with me. Take the time to talk with me like an hour out of his week. I can do this, and so I thankfully put a lot of effort into it. Again, not thinking anything of it. And then, when he asked, he's like, hey, like, are you interested? Initially, it was potentially scouting. They had a couple of their area scouts, I think in Ontario, their OHL guys, a couple of them would move on, and, there's some movement. And so he asked me if that was something I'd be interested in. When I finally met with Don Sweeney, he saw the player development that was, from Quinnipiac, and, player development in the NHL. I didn't know what that meant, actually. He was like, well, are you interested in doing player development? That's something that we're looking to add to that staff. And I said yes, having no idea what that meant. Like knowing that at Quinnipiac, like it was more I was, booking the travel and doing the video. And then like the next part of my job, if I had time, if I'd done all that stuff, got to be like working on player development plans for players. But hopefully he doesn't listen to this, but
and listen, Don, I know you listen every week.
Yeah, no, I hope you listen, Don. I hope. So that again, like that is Cass changing the title of a job so that I don't get boxed into being a hockey operations logistics type of person. Right. That like I'm interested in the at the time it was coaching, but or something that's more in hockey and in that lane. So
I also don't want to gloss over, you're kind of breezing past the headline that you were the first on ice woman hired on ice coach, team official for the Boston Bruins, original 6. I mean, it's a big deal, I mean, I say this all the time when I talk to the players and the coaches. It's a huge deal, the representation, and to see that there's a woman playing, like for my daughter, that's a big deal,
No, I mean, and I'll be honest, like when I say I didn't know what player development meant, I didn't know what it meant. So I didn't know until I was hired officially 2 days before the draft in Montreal.
No kidding.
And they were like, can you get to Montreal for the draft? Like we get everyone together. And so, and that's another story. But it wasn't until I was in Montreal that they were like, all right, so you're going to like get on the ice, like make sure you bring your skates. And I was like, what? I was like, I'm getting on the ice, like with these guys. So that was funny. Like the moment I realized that I was actually on the ice with those guys, and it luckily worked out fine. But I remember
It's
That-
crazy. It's crazy. And your first year with the Bruins, if I did my math right, was 2022-23, right? That
yeah,
that was the best regular season
an
in
historic
NHL
year.
history. That was Jim
Yep.
Montgomery's first year, and that was, Patrice Bergeron and David Krejci's last year. So,
It was certainly a
there's a
pretty
lot.
incredible time to be a part of the Bruins for sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
a lot. I mean, right here, this is where you go, "Well, I had a little something to do with the best regular season," you know what I mean?
I don't know if development is a part of that, and you can credit the development staff from a couple years prior to that.
Hey, you were still on ice, never know, you may show someone a little thing there. I wanna get back because something I wanna go back to, Quinnipiac for a sec, 'cause, one of the things I saw that, Coach Turner she had you address the incoming class at one point at Quinnipiac. Did I read that right?
Yes, yeah,
And the thing that stuck out to me, I'm not it's not word for word, but you said something like, "Even if you just wanna play video games, leave the door open and you'll make friends by accident." It's such a great message, and
yeah,
I didn't wanna gloss that over because that's huge. Because everybody when I was coaching high school, I'd have parents come to me and they were like, "Oh, I'm worried about little Jimmy going to college, because he's quiet or he's odd." And I'm like, "No, in high school, everybody wants to fit in. In college, you can do whatever you want and you'll find your people." I would have to like tell parents that all the time. And I think
yeah.
that's just a great message that's glossed over quite a bit. And I think that's huge of you that's great speech. Or
So, I mean,
whatever.
that's all sort of part of like the say yes
Yeah.
mantra. So, it wasn't the last part of that story is that when I was with the Bruins and the league called me about interviewing for the GM job, I thought I was going to be with the Bruins forever. Like I could have
Mhm.
died a Bruin. I love
Yep.
the Bruins. Like I thought I'd made it. I learned
Hey,
so
Don, same. If you're listening, Don Sweeney, same.
yeah, I learned so much about the game and about hockey. That 1 year I spent there, like it blew my mind. So I was so excited. Like I felt like I was just a sponge, learning so much, but I didn't feel like I was contributing at the level I wanted to. Like I wanted to add more value, and so I was really looking forward to year two to be able to be like, okay, now that I kind of feel like I've got the grasp of this.
You know the
I
ropes, right? Yep.
yeah, totally. And Cass, I told her that the league had called. She said, never say no to the job that you don't have. And so it was another sort of say yes moment. I was like, okay, I'll say yes to the interview. And if anything, my assignment on that interview was to present on my core values, how I was going to establish a culture and what I was going to do in my first 90 days of the job. So I thought, if anything, that it'd be a cool opportunity to sort of think like a GM. Because I do think
Yeah.
like my time at the Bruins, I was, I was very fortunate that like Boston and Providence are very, not far. So a lot
Right.
of people in development are with their AHL team and they're not anywhere near their NHL club. So I was able to be based out of Boston. We also had, I think, 7 guys in the greater Boston area playing college hockey who were drafted players who were sort of under my watch, quote unquote, guys I was keeping, who were drafted, who I was keeping an eye on and following. And so I was able to be based out of the Boston area. And since I was in Boston, Don would invite me into, their amateur scouting meetings, their their trade deadline meetings, draft prep. Like I got to sit at that table and hear those guys talk about how they're going to construct a team. And that's when I kind of got the itch to maybe be on the management side. So I thought, why not go through this interview and just sort of hear about, see if I can go through this presentation and learn a little bit about what it's like to be a GM, and
Be
maybe
great
it's
experience no matter
a great
what, right?
experience. Maybe I can
Yeah.
bring it back and say, Don, here's what I learned, and maybe ask him like if I can kind of shadow him a little bit more, spend more time
Mhm.
on the management side. Something that was, that's all again same as like the Bruins mentorship program. It was just I thought it was going to be like an experience. So that then Cass asked me to actually that was not quite then, but Cass had asked me to speak to the incoming class, which was like a couple thousand people. Like
That's
it
it's
was
a
more
lot.
people than I think. I think initially I thought she just meant like her team, like 6.
Yeah, the incoming freshman class.
Realized she
Right,
meant the
right.
entire incoming freshman class, and because all of a sudden the AD's calling me, and yeah. So anyway, it was sort of I felt like I had to. I thought about like how I'd gotten to that point, and it was because I'd said yes to these opportunities. And so could I say no to this? Like of course I didn't want to speak in front of all those people, but I was like,
Well, I
this
feel like
is
it was
what it
almost
is.
like she painted you into a corner with the whole, she's instilled this mantra and the say
Yeah,
yes. And
totally. Now
great. And then
I
she's
have
like,
to
hey,
say
you want
yes
to mow my
to it.
lawn?
I have to say yes to everything she asked me now.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It's totally it. So I was like, well, like here, let's put my money where my mouth is, kind of thing.
Ah,
So
that's great. I just think it's such a great positive message, and one that doesn't get said enough, that you gotta, like, the what's the old saying that, like, you tell kids, like, when they're little, to talk and to run, and then the rest of your life, you tell them to sit down and be quiet, right?
yeah.
And that's something I've kept conscious since we had our daughter, and it's like I just don't want to, you don't want to be that, and I just think it's a great positive message. I did want to ask you, when you went back to Quinnipiac, there were players there that you played with, that you were
Mhm.
now in a coaching role. That's another, like, weird dynamic that served you well, I'd assume, with the fleet, right?
Yeah, I mean, yeah, similar. Like I have players now who are older than me on the
Yeah.
fleet.
Oh, yeah, by the way, the youngest GM in the history of the PWHL, we should also mention. Yeah.
Yeah, so there are
Good luck,
players who are
coach.
older than me. There are players who are the same year as me. There are players I played against, players I played with, and then players like I worked with when I was working at Quinnipiac, and they were students. I think that like doing that at Quinnipiac first definitely helped me understand the boundary and the line you have to draw. And at the time, like they some of them were my friends, but what was important to me, like I knew I don't I don't know if I like consciously knew this, but when I think back on it, like I knew that cast was my ticket to wherever I needed to go next or wanted to
Mhm.
go next. So it was really important that I made her life easier and that I worked really hard for her, because like and if nothing has been more true. I have realized, luckily very early in my career, that you need people to advocate for you. It really truly takes a village, and
Yeah.
people don't get anywhere, or at least very far, without other people speaking highly of you, advocating for you, and helping you get to the next step in your career. And so I think that's something, like a piece of advice I think about often, is if people who are maybe a little unhappy in their job, do your job better, like do your job really well.
That's the first step, right? Yeah.
Instead of like complaining about it, or looking for ways out, like crush it at your job, because that's how you're going to get to the next
Yeah.
place.
Yeah.
So I always had that sort of mentality, and I might be giving myself too much credit. Like I think also like that coach player mentality. Like I was probably just scared of her and wanted to make sure that like I still felt like she was my coach, so I had to do everything as the best I could. But regardless, it helped me. It's definitely helped me.
So now the PWHL, it's unique starting a league right from scratch, and you had your free agents. Was it a conscious decision? For those that don't know, you went with your three free agents were Hillary Knight, Aaron Frankel, Megan Keller,
Yeah.
like forward D goalie, right? I mean, was that a conscious, like, I want to have the best available at each. I want to build around one. I mean, I knew I knew Frankel from before, and obviously, I mean, who doesn't know who Hillary Knight is, right?
Yeah.
Megan Keller, I knew her name, and I mean this in the most complimentary way possible. She is a beast, right? When she plays, holy smokes. She's probably the nicest person off the ice, but
Yeah.
God, she's like Pronger out there
Yeah.
sometimes. Oh, it's
Totally.
awesome. It's
Yeah.
fantastic. So were those the type of play? Was that the mindset? Was that a predetermined thing that you guys had?
You know what? It was I didn't know what the league was going to have an abundance of and what the league was going to lack. So I didn't know if it was going to be heavy, like there were going to be a ton of forwards and not a lot of D, or vice
Yeah.
versa. In terms of, you know, numbers wise, there's plenty of everybody, but like in terms of who's actually going to impact at a high level, because we haven't seen this quite yet, this league. We
Right.
haven't seen the best players in one league playing a season, not just playing a couple tournaments, or a couple games and having these international tournaments. Like this is a 30 game season. So part of it was not knowing exactly where there was going to be a surplus of an identity or a position. And so feeling like I was sort of covering my basis by going forward D goalie.
Yep.
I relied on Because like I was spent the year before in the men's game and really kind of let go of what was going on in the women's game because I just went full into NHL mode.
Right.
And
Well, plus, and you didn't know, right? Yeah.
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 So like I talked to a lot of coaches, and you're a Northeastern guy, so Dave Flint,
Oh yeah, he's great.
he, I was kind of picking his brain. He's like, when I do that, like when I think of this, I think goal line out. I'm building from the goal line
Yeah.
out, and so that was when I realized I needed to take Aaron before the draft. And I knew I didn't want to be sitting at the draft table wondering, is now the right time to take the goalie? Is now the right time to take the goalie? Like I didn't want that moment or that feeling. I wanted to know that I had it. And I also had just come from the Bruins and their Allmark Swayman kind of, that incredible season that the two of those guys had, and wanted to sort of replicate that. So I also knew I was willing to take a backup goalie or a second goalie or however you want to phrase it, a little bit earlier than maybe some other teams were going to be comfortable. But yeah, in terms of the Hillary and Megan, Hillary had just come out of the 2023 Worlds where she led the tournament in points.
There's a moment in that tournament where Canada won the game. I don't remember which game it was, and they were celebrating, and she took a straight line back to her team and went through their celebration. And I remember watching that and I was like, oh, I love that. I just love that. It's just a huge, like, I don't know, we'll call it a high number flex to the other team right through. And I was just like, oh my God, what a beauty. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, she definitely has that mentality, like that attitude. And then Keller, yeah, I mean, I'm with you. Like, I knew she was a great hockey player. I didn't know how good she was until this past year. Like, she was phenomenal. I think she's the best D in the league. Like, she's incredible.
And her game is I think you can appreciate it much more in person than on TV or on video, whatever, or maybe video if there's like a different angle and they show like the whole play and the surrounding. But there's so much, like the way she sets up the play and the way she baits the forward into the where she wants him, and it's just, I mean, she's unbelievable.
Yeah, no, I mean, she can do anything she wants to do on the ice, pretty much. Like, she's just like sees the game so well. She's evasive, like how she gets out of situations you think she's going to get put into the boards, and she just cuts out. And then she was playing. Gosh, I mean, our playoffs, we went into overtime so many times, but she was playing like easily beyond 30 minutes a game.
We talked about it at the podcast during the podcast at the time, and I want to say there was one game she was pushing 40 minutes.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. And in that, I'm not going to remember which game it was. I don't remember if it was the second or third. It was the game that went into like 5 overtimes. And going into, I think it was in the second period, she separated her shoulder, had a grade 3 AC joint sprain, where like most people they're not playing anymore. And she played not just like the 3rd, 4th, and 5th period of that game, but then continued on through the rest of playoffs. Like, and it was a bummer because I think like she would have had a phenomenal playoffs beyond that. Like, she was already one of the best players on the ice.
Right. It's like a Bergeron moment.
It was the same thing. Like, she's a warrior. Like,
that's great. And then at the draft, I mean, longtime friend of the podcast, one of our favorites, you drafted Alina Mueller with the 3rd pick overall, the first pick in the history. And we watched the draft, like my daughter and we were watching. And when Alina got picked, she jumped up. My daughter's 8, and she's jumped off the couch, so excited that Alina was going to be in Boston. Great. Yeah. And she's the best. She's so good. Yeah. No, and not even talking about her hockey skills. She's just a great person.
Yeah, she's incredible. She's like, she's so kind and is always like thanking me. Like, I'll do something, or she'll do something for me. Like, she'll hold the door for me and then she'll say thank you. And I'm like, wait, what?
we were at a Huskies game once, and I was waiting for the coach because we're about, I think we're going up for something to eat or something. I don't remember what it was. It was me and my daughter. And this is before I knew Alina or anything. And she just was walking by. She just done some interview, and she saw my daughter standing there, a little kid. My daughter was probably 5 at the time. Stops, like still in her gear, stops, ask her how she liked the game, if she had a good time, said hi to me. Didn't know I was waiting for a carp, just a great person. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can't say
I
enough for her.
think she's going to have an outbreak season 2.
You think? Oh, good.
Yeah, I do. I think she's going to be incredible this season.
Yeah. Well, that's something else I want to get into. So I have so many questions. How do you think, if at all, the PWHL is going to impact NCAA hockey with the physicality at the PWHL level?
It's a good question. I think it may be a slow transition, if a transition at all. I mean, there is certainly a difference right now, I would say, in the physicality just between conferences. So like,
for sure.
WCHA, that's, it's a more physical game. I do think that some of the other conferences will start to like catch up to that at least. I'll be curious to see if that's something. I know it's a conversation that they're having. Do they actually change rules? Do the refs just sort of let things go a little bit more? Like I think the right thing to do is to allow a little bit more physicality so that it's not so much
consistent calls. That's all we need. Consistency from the refs.
And I think we found that like this, even the PWHL this past season, like that's, we can do better with the consistency. Loved the physicality, and and we were oftentimes the transgressor. Like we were a physical team, and some non-calls, I was like, how did they not call that? But we saw a couple, a boarding call that in one game is a 5-minute major and you're kicked out, and then a non-call in another game. So I know that's something that the league's prioritizing, cleaning up, and just making it more consistent and making sure that player safety is at the forefront.
Yeah, it's interesting because then it becomes like, if that becomes the case, then the NCAA recruiting becomes different with the terms of the players that they're recruiting, depending on the rules. Speaking of the NCAA, so there's no minor league, obviously, for the PWHL, not yet, maybe at some point, which would be fantastic. Is there a rule in place? Do the players have to do a certain amount of NCAA years, or can they do a one and done? Can they declare? How does that? And I don't want to, if we're talking about things you can't talk about, that's fine.
No, I mean, I will say like the league is any rules that are in existence this year can change to next year. So like they want to be very clear that they have the ability to change anything that either didn't work or they didn't like. But that being said, right now, anybody can just declare. You don't want to go to college, you can just declare. And how it works is if you declare for the draft and you get drafted, you have to come play. I think it's that you no longer have your NCAA eligibility at that point.
You're forfeiting.
If you get drafted. If you enter the draft and you don't get drafted, you're allowed to go,
that's interesting. That's interesting. This one might be tough. You had to trade a former teammate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's got to be, I mean, I can't even imagine, how was that? I don't know how else to ask it.
It's first
business,
of all, it's hard to trade a player anyway, especially like in our game where we haven't seen that yet, really. It's like,
well, you did have the first trades.
So even that was hard. Trading Cheyenne. So Cheyenne she transferred into Quinnipiac my freshman year. So we actually were roommates at
I didn't know you were roommates.
Summer school. So first summer. Yeah. And she at that point had already played on, the UAT national team. She was sort of in that national team pool. So I talk about struggling and being really shocked when I showed up to Quinnipiac. Like it wasn't shocking for her. Like this was normal and expected. And so she really helped me out actually that summer with that adjustment and just sort of like keeping me calm and keeping me like ready to go and doing what I needed to be doing. And so she's actually somebody I've always looked up to. It's why I made sure she was on my team the first go around. Like I knew that she was going to be a great leader and a great role model, and she plays the game the right way. in our league at that in year one, there, we weren't allowed to trade draft picks. So you weren't going to see any, lopsided trades. You weren't going to see anybody sort of sacrifice the future for the now or vice versa. So it had to be pretty even trades and what each team needed. And we, at the time, it's kind of, I almost forget that we were like this because you think about our playoff or our end of our season and into our playoff run, like how physical, how competitive we were, the games that we pulled wins out of. But at the time, we weren't competing at a high enough level. Like we weren't winning battles, weren't playing physical enough. Like we weren't playing to the identity that I was hoping that we would have at that time. And I knew that, Lexi was somebody who was maybe being a little bit underutilized in Ottawa, and they were very keen on Shy. And so I knew that was just a strategic decision I had to make. And it's definitely gets complicated. There's so many players that I'm friends with who are in this league, and players that I just respect. I grew up I think of Hillary Knight, Gigi Marvin, and these players. Amanda Pelkey was sort of a hometown hero for me. Grew up in Vermont. So it's completely challenging. And it was a new challenge for me to manage those relationships and being a GM for these players. And but I just kept coming back to I have to do what's best for this team. I have to, that's my only job, is to think about how to improve this team and how do I get 1% better. And I definitely lean towards that side of exploring every avenue, exploring every opportunity. I don't want to make trades to just make trades, but I want to always be thinking about ways that I can make the team better. And that was just a decision at that time.
Yeah, it's a tough one. Lexi too is she's like a walking double shot of espresso from what I see of her online. The thing when she showed up at that fan's birthday party, the surprise. I mean, that's just unbelievable. And that's another big thing with the league. The fan engagement is unparalleled. It's amazing. It's almost a detriment. I don't know if you're aware of this because we tracked it through I thought I had it here somewhere. Through the first month of the season, the home teams went I think 7-12.
Yeah.
Because there's so much that they were doing. It's fantastic, but I'm glad it evened out after a little while.
Yeah, I mean, it was certainly an adjustment in just everything that we were doing as a league and for these players. And so it wasn't totally surprising how we travel. Where most of these players, if they're traveling, if they're flying, so maybe if you played in the WCHA, you're flying. But if you played out east, you were busing to games, but you played Friday, Saturday, back to back. And then every Monday looked the same. Every Tuesday looked the same. In this league, it's, we might play Ottawa on Wednesday. That means we're flying Tuesday, we play Wednesday, fly home Thursday, Friday. We have to have an off day each week, once a week. So Friday might be the off day, and then Saturday is the day before the game. Sunday you play, and it's just a machine. And unfortunately, we're not at a place where we're chartering, so that makes the travel a little bit longer and a little bit more of a challenge, and it makes your week go by just quickly. All of a sudden, it's the next game.
It's something. It's a crazy being at the games and to see all the behind the scenes stuff, and it was the way you guys got it up and going and so fast, and it was just oh my, it's amazing to me. This might be the dumbest question I'm going to ask you, but how do you watch a game as a GM? Do you look at players if you say, oh, player X, I know her deal is up at the end of this season, I'm going to keep an eye on her? Are you watching how lines on your own team are playing together or defensive pairings? Because I know you're not watching it like an average fan. I was just curious about that.
Yeah. I'm taking notes the whole game. I've got both rosters, on my iPad, and then we're evaluating players after every game. So we're ranking and rating system so that we can see how consistent players are. You might have a player who you rank a little bit lower, but you rate them very high. And that just means they're doing really well. And that might just mean they're doing very well in that role. Or it means we may need to utilize them a little bit more. But it doesn't necessarily mean it's a bad thing if they're ranked a little bit lower. It's more the rating that I care about. But It's definitely a challenge. Like I sometimes get into fan mode where I'm just like watching, my team and I just
Yeah.
want to watch the game. But
Everybody remembers Cam Neely throwing water bottles, so it's not just you, right?
yeah,
I mean,
it's honestly so stressful. Like when you're a player, it's the least stress. It's the least stressful. Like it's fun. Like you have complete control over what's going to happen in the game because you're actually out there performing. When you're a coach, it's a little bit more stressful, but you get to at least say what your thoughts are to certain players. When you're up in the management suite, I'm so far away from that coaching staff and that bench that I have no outcome in the game, and that's a total challenge. But I'm early. Depends on where we're at in the season. I think early on in
right,
the season, I was trying to watch both teams a lot. Like I wanted to see where my players were at, but I was really interested in how other teams were performing and what players were performing. And as we got farther and farther, you play the team so many times that I didn't have to focus as much on other opponents because we'd seen them so many times. So I was
right.
really analyzing our players and just trying to make sure. Like, and part of it was, this is year one. A lot of these players were first line players, top pair
Yeah,
D, and now not everyone can be in those roles. And so figuring out the line combinations, like we spent a lot of the season mixing up the lines, which admittedly is incredibly hard to create
right.
chemistry when you do that. So I think we did that knowing that we were putting the players at a little bit of a disservice in terms of building chemistry, but wanted to make sure that we were having the right players complement one another. So that became a big part of the season, was watching specific line combinations and
See how they
player
worked out. Yep. This one too, this may be more of a scout question, but so you talk about like first line players in different roles.
yeah
It's with the physicality portion of it, it's going to have to, everyone's going to react to that differently. Like Mike Tyson says, everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the face, right?
yeah
So like looking at NCAA players that don't have to deal with that, now you're like, oh, how is Hannah Bilka going to be able to handle? I'm just using her as your pick. Like, is that part of the, like, when you're looking at players, like, oh, she handled this in the NCAA, or she kind of turtled every, and not saying this about Bilka, but she, every time someone leaned on her, she would kind of take a slashing penalty. Is that part of it as well? That part of looking at all these, like doing your evaluations?
Yeah, I think a willingness to play physical matters in a way that maybe it didn't as much before this league existed. I think you think a little bit more about size and length, especially when we're thinking about defenders, like how long is their reach. But yeah, I mean, players need to be able to protect the puck in a different way than they've ever had to in this league. Have to manage the physicality. So it certainly is a factor. And I think we saw this year, like there are a lot of players who had phenomenal college careers, like incredible college careers, and couldn't find their way in this league. And it doesn't mean that they won't, but
Right.
just might have been an adjustment with the physicality. And then also you're on the ice with, the best players. Like it's no longer playing, beating up on Maine or whoever it is. Yeah, just like any college team that has, 3 to 5 great players, and then a lot of like middle of the pack depth players.
Right. And that's where now you're making the argument for the PAWHL, right?
Yeah.
The minor. I mean, hopefully, right, with the right TV deals, and if things keep going, um, I guarantee you're not going to answer this one. Anything any talks about expansion? Any short list of cities or
It's certainly a conversation, and not like one that I'm deeply involved in, but I know that Mark Walter, our
Mhm.
owner, he came to the final game of our playoffs, and after the game, he's was so impressed by it and excited about it. He's like, we need to expand right away.
Yeah,
And everyone's like, well, let's just we started this we started this year so late, figured it out, like just hung on. And now we can finally have some strategic thoughts. Let's get through season 2, and then let's like actually have those
there's
conversations.
NHL teams that are like actively campaigning.
Yeah.
Or,
Yeah.
which is, I mean, think about that 2 years ago, right? I mean, it's fantastic,
Yeah.
Um, I did wanna ask you about the salary structure, the salary, not a salary cap, but a salary team average. Do you foresee a day when there's gonna be, like, a cap like the NHL?
So we have a cap.
Oh, I
Uh,
thought it was still the average.
yeah. So it's because it's the average. Like our cap is one number, and it's the floor and the ceiling.
Oh, okay, I got you, I
So,
got you.
so
Yep,
technically, there is an amount of money we have to spend, and you have to spend the exact amount, and that's
yep,
how you get the average. So yeah.
yeah, okay, okay. So, yeah, saying the same thing, but from both sides. Okay, alright, good. And then just a couple of more because I reached out to some of our other guys, and I was like, "You got any questions for a GM?" Um, how's it dealing with Brian Burke for the head of the PWA, the Players Association?
I actually don't have to deal with him quite that often,
Okay.
just because he's head of the PA. But they're doing a great job representing the players, and I've gotten to watch a couple games with him, or he'll come up into our management suite for games. So he's great, and it's great to have him as part of
He's
our
a
league.
great ambassador too.
Yeah, totally.
And speaking of ambassadors, this one was asked me by like 3 different people. What's Billie Jean King like?
She's amazing. She's so kind. She's so cool. She's such a fan, and it's so
Yeah.
fun to like watch a game with her. Be just to be around her. Like it's I'm always a little starstruck when I'm in a room with her. But she's the fans love her. Everyone's so excited. I
Oh,
remember
yeah.
I was sitting up in my suite, and she wanted to sit. She popped up to the suite for a little bit, but then she wanted to sit in the stands,
Yeah.
and the period ended, and the line of people were coming up to her to take pictures. Like it was awesome. So she's the best.
Like,
So
you don't know what it is, but she has it, right?
yeah,
You know what I mean? Does
yeah,
that make sense? 'Cause
yeah,
when at the final game, we were down there, and she walked, like, 5 feet away from me, and me and my buddy were like, "Oh my god," like, I got like, it was like a
yeah,
weird feeling, I was like, and I've met, like, some pretty big people, like, in entertainment or hockey, but that's just, I mean, she's an icon, you
yeah.
know?
I
Yeah.
know.
No, that was a really cool spot. I know there's a lot of players that are in the league, but I do wanna ask you about one because she's on my, short list of people I wanna get on the podcast. Uh, Kelly Babstock. I mean, come on. She's just pure vibes, right? Everything I
Yeah,
see of her, she's fantastic. And, I mean, big impact for you guys.
yeah. So she was a senior my freshman year at Quinnipiac. So
Yep,
that's my connection to
right.
Babs, and I mean she's also the reason Quinnipiac's on the map. Like she turned that program around. I think they were 3-19 the year before she got there, and they were 19-3 the year after. And she scored back-to-back natural hat tricks one weekend. Like she was one of the most like natural goal scorers I've ever been on the ice with or been around. And obviously playing a very different role with us. Coming in, late in the season as a reserve player. She'd been cut from New York's camp. And we just, again, like, I talked about it with Lexi a little bit. Like, we needed the energy, we needed to compete. And that was somebody that I knew like could bring it. And
Yeah.
I didn't know what it was going to look like on the ice, but man, she is willing to do whatever it takes, like to create some energy, to create some buzz. Like, she's just an awesome presence on the bench and in the locker room.
She's your bacon. She makes everything better. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
We had
exactly.
a kid I coached years ago, and we nicknamed him Bacon because no matter
That's
who we put him with,
awesome.
he made him better. And then quickly, I just want to ask you about your draft class. Um, you guys pulled the first ever picks draft trade.
Yeah.
Um, you had some players targeting. I got to be honest with you. You guys have probably if not the best, one of the best drafts for the team, for the league.
I mean, I appreciate we think that, and I appreciate you saying that. I don't know if that's if everybody thinks that, but it's easy to think you did a good job at the draft. We'll find out when we get on the ice. But I definitely think there's a reason that we traded away picks to get
Right.
Danielle Peshova up pretty early.
Yep.
I'll be honest, I didn't expect Hannah Bilko to be on the board when we were
Really?
Picking, I thought Minnesota would take her. So I thought, we would probably be picking a D there in that first round.
Okay.
But no, Hannah, if I had the first pick overall, I would have taken her. So when
Oh,
she was there,
she's so good. I was happy to see her win, even though she's a BC kid. I mean, you have some Boston ties. You either went to BC or you hate BC. That's how it
right,
works around here.
right.
But yeah, that was a great story, and she's such a good player. And then the one I wanted to ask you about was Sydney Bard.
Yeah,
She's not a scrapper, huh?
yeah,
She is scrappy, a little undersized for what you were talking about, but she plays huge. If
yeah,
that's
yeah.
something that
She's got
complements.
the willingness to play physical. I think what we saw this past year is, especially for D, your foot speed has to be great and your skating has to be great. And she's a great skater. Like, she's mobile. And we want to get, D in the rush. We want to get have a fast transition game. And so we need D who can activate, and she certainly can.
And then I I know you sell yourself short as a player, but Shea Maloney, does she remind you of yourself a little bit?
A better version of myself.
Okay, I mean, she's got the hockey
Yeah,
IQ. She's super responsible, and she has a huge upside. If
yeah.
I just was curious about that one. If you were like, oh, I see a little of myself in that player.
No, I mean, so the funny thing about the identity piece is there really aren't many identities right now in our game, because when you only have 6 teams,
Right.
You're pulling from the best of the best. Like,
Right.
we don't have, I don't think I'd have to look at rosters, but I don't think every first line player is in this league from college. There's
Well,
not
yep.
there's not even that many teams. So you've got players. You really only have first line players in this league and first pair D. So all of the D in the league are active. They're mobile. They want to play offense.
Right.
And so
They can all
that's
break out. They
probably,
all have the quick first step. Yeah,
yeah.
totally.
And the downside of that is you don't have a lot of simple, reliable, just puck moving D. You've got a lot of risk, a lot of D who are used to being able to rush end to end and now don't have that ability because everyone's better. And it's the same thing up front, right? Like, we have a lot of players who are comfortable hanging on to pucks, who maybe are used to be able to skate by everybody, so they're perimeter. But you don't have as many who are, maybe who were held accountable in college because they were the best players on their team. Shea Maloney, like, this is sort of a funny thought, but like, I think she's one of the best changers. Like, she's reliable. She changes in the offensive zone. She doesn't change on the back check. Like little stuff like that.
Crazy. Even in beer league, that drives me nuts.
And you'd be surprised, but like, when you're coaching, you're not coaching a lot of times. You're not coaching your best players because you're trying to catch everybody up. You're working on, so
but here they all were the best players.
Yeah. So a lot of these players are like used to being able to kind of, they had a lot of leeway and they had a long leash. And so Shea, is somebody who I expect to come into our camp and hopefully win a job, but by being, a great, what we kind of talked about, being that reliable, maybe a fourth liner and great F1 and knows her role and sets up the next line to be successful.
Push the pace from the bottom too.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. And then the
she
other
gets around well. She's fast.
Oh yeah, she's real fast. Markova, this one. So I was looking. There's not a lot, right? For her because she was playing in Russia, but I did notice that she was almost a point per game in the regular season, and then well above a point per game in the playoffs, which is kind of what you want. This could be like a lottery ticket player for you guys.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see her. I obviously haven't been able to see her live, so I've only seen tape and seen her stats, and I think we won't know till she comes to camp. She's on the ice with these players, like how she compares. But a little bit of a swing, but hoping that we're hitting the upside because she's a skilled player.
Yeah, and then Harmet's there. She's coming back from injury, so that again, lottery ticket.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's there's no way she makes it to the 7th round if she was healthy.
She was a top pair at Ohio State, right? Wasn't she playing top pair minutes?
Yeah.
I read the list and then I was like, wait a minute, I know that name, and I was like looking back and I'm like, oh yeah, so it was the girl. No, that's great. Do you have time for lightning round?
Yeah.
Oh,
Good.
all right. Well, the lightning round we're brought to you by our presenting sponsor, Key Sparkling Water at keysparklingwater.com. Blackberry lemon, key lime, and blood orange cherry. You remember when you leave the house? Phone, wallet, key. So there you go. Key sparkling water. All right. So lightning round. These are hockey and non-hockey.
Okay.
Favorite cartoon character?
Oh, it's got to be like a Rocket Power character. Otto. Do you ever watch? You're older.
Wait, I can
Rocket Power was the coolest.
All right. Do you tape your stick heel to toe or toe to heel, and black tape or white?
Oh, I was a long time black tape.
Oh yeah,
player.
okay.
Yeah, I why let the goalie see? Like take as much. I needed as much help as I could get, so I didn't want them to see where that puck was on my stick. But heel to toe.
Heel to toe. Would you rather fight a horse-sized duck or 100 duck-sized horses?
I think the
This is the
100
morning
duck
creek
size.
difference. You're not getting this
The
everywhere else.
100 duck size horses.
All right.
That might be a controversial pick, but
what is your go-to pizza topping?
you know what? I'm a Hawaiian pizza fan, so I'll do the pineapple and the bacon, or pineapple and ham, or
we just had a whole controversy with the equipment manager at Northeastern with Hawaiian pizza. So that's hilarious.
I think you can put anything. I think there are no wrong answers on pizza.
No, there's not. The funniest one was we had a player at Northeastern once when I asked, and she was like, they're D1 athletes, top of their game. She's like, yeah, for me, like a cheat meal is like a sweet potato. And I was like, oh my gosh. Yeah, love you, Abby, but that was a tough one. Your favorite pastime, not hockey related?
Ooh, I grew up in rural Vermont. We did a lot of camping, so I'd say camping.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Would you rather have the ability to speak every language in the world or be able to talk to animals?
Oh, talk to animals.
Yeah. Besides hockey, what pro sport would you pick to be successful at?
Soccer, because I played soccer. I loved soccer, and I always felt like I was pretty good at soccer. So that one. But like, if I could be suddenly good at anything, it'd either be golf.
Okay.
Watching the Summer Olympics, like big gymnastics fan.
Oh yeah.
So one of those maybe.
Okay. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would you choose?
Oh. I don't know if I have an answer for that. I was just in Vermont this past weekend, and I'm like, how did I get so lucky to grow up here?
Yeah.
I do not appreciate it. Like, I might say that.
There's nothing wrong with that.
There's
no wrong answer.
Yeah.
I love Vermont. We go up every year. This is the Beauty Unis question. Beautyunis.com. Don't look away. Look the part. All your jerseys and everything. One-stop shopping. Number 12 that you wore in college. Any significance?
Yeah, I was a Tom Brady fan.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I'm a Raiders fan, so okay. I like Tom Brady, but not the team so much. Start, bench, or cut? Pancake, waffles, and French toast.
Start French toast. I'm cutting waffles.
My God, waffles gets no love in this question. If you had a time machine, where's the first time you would go?
Oh, I think like turn of the century, 1900, or one. Like Prohibition, 1920, somewhere in that window.
Good, yeah, those are cool. Favorite and least favorite rinks you've played? We'll say played in. Go back to your playing days.
Yeah, I always had. Okay, I had fond memories of playing at Dartmouth, and I think it was because they weren't that good then, so I knew I was going to play a lot. Always had a lot of success there, and it was big. I don't know, it felt big. It wasn't Olympic size or anything like that, but I always felt like that was a big ice sheet.
It's got that curved. It's got the curved roof that makes something it feel big.
I always liked playing there. Least favorite, it was probably like Union. I put in my least favorite.
Who would you pick to play you in a movie about your life?
That's a good question. I would love to see like an Amy Schumer or some
Okay.
comedian.
Yeah. What pro player do you look at as like the closest comparison to how you played, like your role? Who do you look at?
They're not playing in the PWHL. I won't disrespect anybody to compare my game to them. You know who does a really good job? I'll stick with a signed player so I don't like get myself in trouble. But Natalie Snodgrass.
Oh yeah.
She plays a fourth line role really well, and that would have been something I'd like to do. So
Yeah. I was playing the last really competitive beer league I was in way over my head. And so I'd go out there and I just like buzz up and down the right wing, trying not to get scored on. But then because I was like a D, they were like, oh, Brownie, you play forward in this level. And then when there was a penalty, though, I was like, now's my time to shine because I
yeah,
know how to kill penalties. I'll block shots in beer league. So I was like, yeah, give me that. Yeah. So I get it. Um, you have your own music festival. Okay.
okay.
Top 3 artists, living or dead. Who do you got?
I'm like a '90s like Goo Goo Dolls, Matchbox 20 fan. So something in that lane probably.
Okay.
Yeah,
And you
I don't
see
know who my
Oasis
third
is
would
coming
be, but
back? Did you see the
what?
reunion tour for Oasis
Yeah,
is
I
coming
think so.
back?
Yeah, exactly, something
Yeah.
like that.
The most famous person in your phone that you're comfortable sharing.
Uh, Patrice Bergeron, probably.
Oh my God, that's oh my God. So my co-host, he has every time I mention Bergeron, he'll be like, "Oh, 36 seconds this episode before you mentioned him." I just yeah, he's the All right, so this leads me into my last question. I always ask because Bergeron and Iginla are my 2 guys.
Yeah.
Okay, always have been. I was going to ask if you had a story. You must have a Bergeron story, and I was going to say you have a great Bergeron story you could share, or do you have a Iginla story you could share? I don't know if you cross paths with Iginla.
I've never crossed paths with Iginla. Bergie, I don't know if I have a good story. I mean, he's like, when they say like, don't meet your heroes, like meet him. Like he's an amazing guy, amazing human being. He was a big help for us this past season. Like he dropped
The puck opening night, right? Yeah.
He announced our captains.
Yeah, that's right. I remember that video.
He like so kind. So he's great. I think I have a Brad Marchand story, and he wouldn't remember it. This is just like me remembering this moment. The first time I ever met him, I was in an elevator at Warrior, and it was right before the rookie camp. We were gonna head to Buffalo, and the door is closing, and all of a sudden he sticks his hand in. I don't know who it is, but he sticks his hand in and he like opens the elevator. I'm like, oh, that's Brad Marchand. I haven't met him. I'm like, do I introduce myself? Do I not? Does he know who I am? Do I have to say something? Like I had a stroke. Like he was talking to me and I didn't like, I didn't know what to say. He asked me a question like, who's on your list? And he was talking about prospects because we just had the draft. We were going to go to the rookie camp. Meanwhile, I don't know any of the players yet. Like I'm so new. I don't know anything. So I'm like list, and I'm like in my head, and it must have been so much time went by. And he's like, like who do you like? I'm like, oh my gosh, I'm not saying anything. And I was just like, I like them all. You better watch out for your job. And then
yeah, no, that's great. That's got to be. Oh my God, I can't even imagine when I first started doing this. I reached out to the Bruins alumni. And I was like, hey, we're doing this podcast. I just joined on, as the Bruins writer and, and I was wondering if, we could have someone on. And she was like, who do you want to have on? And I assumed everybody in the alumni was going to ask for Neely or Bork, right? My guy growing up was Bobby Carpenter. Loved Bobby Carpenter. So I was like, well, Bobby Carpenter would be fantastic. She's like, okay, gets my information. She's like, expect a call. And I'm like, yeah, all right, sure. I thought she was just blowing me off. And maybe an hour later, my phone rings and I answer the phone and I'm like, hello. He's like, is this Adam? I go, yeah. He goes, this is Bobby Carpenter. I go, holy effing S, and he just started laughing. He was the nicest guy, but they got to like him, my reaction to Carpenter, you being tongue tied with Marchand, I assume that's their every day.
Yeah.
So that's their baseline,
Yeah.
And I will say, like, I've seen how players, kids at the PWHL games react to like when Alina tosses them a puck or Hillary Knight bumps some knucks on the glass. It's the same kind of thing.
Yeah,
You know,
yeah,
so
it's so cool, and it's silly. Like they're just people, and
yeah.
when I see the girls getting all worked up about our players, I'm like, it's just, it's just Lena. Like,
Yeah, I know,
but
but still,
it's so cool that
yeah,
how
it's
much it
really cool.
means to them. Yeah.
One last question is, I thought I read something. Is there a possibility of you guys playing TD Garden?
A possibility. I don't know where we're at actually with those conversations. Of nothing's confirmed at this time, but I know that those are conversations that are being had, and we're hopeful.
Oh, cool. No, yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry if I got
No,
in trouble with that one.
Okay.
Well, I want to thank you for your time. I can't believe I took up this much of it, and I apologize for that.
No, this is fun. I've been doing like, stuff where I have to be a little bit more polished. No offense to your podcast, but
No.
like interviews about
No, this is not. You can next time you see Alina, you can be like, "Oh, I went through the lightning round with Brownie." She'll just start laughing.
Yeah, I will.
When she came on, I didn't know her as well, and we did the lightning round, and she's so polite. She was like covering her mouth laughing, and like if you listen to the audio, it's like she was really giving it deep thought, but she was just in her dorm room laughing, and yeah. She's the best. So you can tell her I put you through the same.
I will.
Yeah.
This was so much fun. I had a blast.
No, it's great. Thank you again, and I can't wait to meet you in person at the season at the Tsonga Center. So everyone, listen, if you have a chance, go to the Tsonga Center, go support the fleet. I mean, it's like the World War II support the fleet kind of thing. It's such a great atmosphere. I wrote an article about it, how between game one and the final game, how it went from everybody was happy to be there the first game and cheering icing and stuff. By the end game, it was still the welcoming and the everyone's welcome vibe was still there, but it was also then get back on the back check. It was a little more hockey, and it was a great growth through the season. They do a great job. Everyone at the Tsonga Center is super nice. It just goes out of their way to make your time special. Met families that drove all the way out from like Springfield, for games and stuff. It's fantastic. So it's definitely worth the price of admission. Best women hockey players on the planet. I can't say enough about the PWHL. So thanks again, Danielle. Great to have you on. And thanks for listening to the Morning Skate, everyone. We'll see you next time. Now this is where I screw it up.